Okay, so any comments on, any votes on fern? Any of you that are, Bob, have you unmuted others?
I will unmute them as they get our
Okay.
attention. Otherwise I'll have to find the list.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments on the fern? Anybody have experience with either of these ferns, or love them, hate them, whatever?
Best thing is that people put something in, especially those who are gonna, our subject matter experts, put something in the chat, and then I can unmute them.
Well, Kate Elder raised her hand. Kat.
In the meantime, Terry Hurley has a question. Are there any ferns that like wet shade?
Well, and that's something we need to think about, because when you think about shade, there's a little bit of a difference in species if you have wet shade versus a dry shade. So I think that we may end up with, you know, more than, we may pick 9, but we may have more than 4 alternates, because we might have one that we're going to say, oh, well, this one has to really be moist and this one has to really, you know, be dry. So we may have nine sort of more flexible species, and then we may have 4 alternates that want moist and 4 alternates that want dry. Or we may have, well, these will grow in mostly shade, but they're going to need a little bit of, they're going to need part shade versus full shade. So we may have to qualify this a little bit more than we did the 9 natives for sun.
Kat Elder is unmuted. Go ahead, Kat.
I was just going to say, I have wood fern, and I have different varieties of wood fern. I have the one that's pictured, and then another one that's a little different, and it does spread. It does clump, so it's easy to share, but I have different varieties of wood fern.
Well, what we want to do is we do want to stay with a straight species and a native, and not a cultivar or variety. So do you have, is it a subspecies, a natural subspecies, or do you have cultivars?
They're not cultivars. I'm pretty sure they're not cultivars. Some have finer leaves and some have a little bit thicker leaves, but they look very similar. I think maybe the native one doesn't spread much as the other one that has the wider leaves, and that may be a cultivar that somehow I got a hold of. I don't know.
Okay.
So I also have another question about the Christmas fern. That looks like a fern. It looks very similar to a Boston fern that spreads like crazy. So, and the one that looks like the Boston fern is maybe that's a cultivar. I don't know.
This is a native, and it is listed as a clumping fern. There are a lot of, and I have one. There are a lot of sort of the leatherleaf fern or the sword ferns out there that are Asian, that are not native, and they are going to be, they're going to be spreaders. Yeah, I'm going to step away.
Okay, there's a question from Christy Huffman. She has an oak tree of 2 feet in diameter and wants to know how far to plant a fern under an oak tree.
Okay, repeat it, Bob. I had to go check with some people that were making noise.
Christy Huffman has a 2-foot diameter oak tree. It's a huge oak tree. And so how far from the trunk to plant a fern?
Well, you know, I have a large garden out in Richmond, and I have one big oak tree. I have fern under, and I planted it a little bit away, but I have fern and Turk's cap underneath it, and they have grown to the trunk. So, you know, I would say, you know, if you start digging and you hit a lot of roots, move out a little bit. And if you're only doing pocket planting and you're not trying to, you know, run a tiller underneath there, then one small hole for a fern or 2 is probably not going to hurt that tree. Any other comments? It's an oak tree. It's a huge oak tree. Okay. you like wood fern because it tolerates clay. But Lan, what is your experience with how wood fern runs? Is Lan muted?
Sorry, I was dealing with a chat. Give me 1 second till I get to Lan. Okay, you're unmuted, Lan.
Lan, you had a comment about wood fern and clay.
Sorry, I thought I had unmuted her and it,
Okay.
okay,
Okay.
she's good, she's good, sorry.
My friend Pat Compton has wood fern on the side of the driveway, and she just planted it, and you know, every once in a while she'll harvest it and give it to somebody else, but it's between the driveway and the house, and it's doing fine. It was doing fine.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That's why, because some of the ferns sounds like it's East Texas, and they probably like sandy soil or something, but that wood fern, it just, I mean, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we don't have any, does anybody have any experience with the Christmas fern or the royal fern? I'm not hearing anybody talk about those. So more experience with the wood fern. So, okay.
There's a question from Mary Waters to Lan. Do you find that wood fern spreads a lot?
I don't, not where she had it, because it's between the house and the driveway, okay? And she does harvest it sometimes. So it probably does spread, but how much, I don't know.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it's also, this is semi-evergreen. This one's deciduous, and this one's evergreen. So, okay. All right.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
Noreen Horde says, yes, it does spread a lot.
Yeah, I've seen this one spread a good bit. I'm looking for a vote for Christmas fern. Nobody's backing me up here. From a design standpoint, I like the Christmas fern, but if nobody has experience with it, we need to do a little more research on this then. So, and it could be that we put down both of these and we say, here's alternates A and B, just know this one's going to spread more. And know this one may not want to sit in standing water. It may want to be a little bit drier. So, okay, I'm going to go to the next one because we're kind of keep this meeting to about an hour or so. Okay, Virginia wild rye. So in the original program, we have, several grasses. And so the question is, in a suburban urban garden, would you want a grass? And the Virginia wild rye is a native grass that grows in the shade. So it's good for, seed and forage for birds and animals, good nesting material. It is perennial. Are there any thoughts about this? Has anybody grown this? I have personally not grown this in a garden.
Beth?
Yeah.
Would it be good at this time to also discuss Cherokee sedge, since it's grass-like? And then also
it's on here. It's on the list.
The Casmanthium, but kind of include them. I know that the sedge isn't a grass. Kind of say these are the three grass or grass-like things we're looking at.
Okay, good point. So we're looking at the Virginia wild, and I'm just going to use common names because they're here. Y'all can read the scientific names, and it's easier for me to talk. So we have the Virginia wild rye, which is a little rangier. It's a little rangier, and it might be good in one garden and not in another. And then the next one we looked at is the Cherokee sedge. The thing about the Cherokee sedge is it's evergreen. It's pretty readily available. Josh Growers grows it out of Georgetown. It is evergreen, so you have it's grass-like, but it's evergreen, so you have that winter look, and it's also got some wildlife value. So there's a lot of sedges that are native in Texas, but this one, as you read through it, this one seems to behave itself a little bit. I get a little nervous when I feel like I'm planting that grass. So that's one grass-like item, and then the other one is the broadleaf wood oats or inland sea oats. So just know, names are changing because of the genetics that they're doing now on plants. They're changing scientific names on us. Plants that we've known for, 30 years by one name. The next day, somebody gives it a new name. So this one changed from inland sea oats to broadleaf wood oats sometime in the last couple of years. This is a beautiful one. I have this in my garden, but I have a garden I can afford to let it spread. It does spread by seed. It spreads by the root, but it also spreads by seed. It is beautiful, but it can make a really big clump, and then it can make even more. So the question is I think it's lovely. There's another Chesnanthium, a slender wood oat, but it's not as readily available in the trade. And, you know, we're looking for stuff that people can go buy. So again, Chesnanthium, Cherokee sedge, and Virginia wild rye. So any comments on those three?
Well, hello. I was just gonna, this is Katie. I was gonna mention the Cherokee sedge is a little lower, and over time it does a funny thing. It grows in a ring, and it may drop some seeds and spread, but it makes a ring, and I like it a lot. And then when it's flowering, you get a long stem. So it's not as high perhaps as the wild rye and the wood oats.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question from Stephen Benigno. Were Carex, Flacosperma, or Tridens flavus considered?
Steve, type those names out for us, so we'll have it in the chat, and because we can save this chat.
Yes.
And Steve should be unmuted too.
Okay, will do.
Okay, I got a comment from two comments about wild rye. Noreen says that she likes the wild rye for the height at the back of the garden, and then use Cherokee sedge for the low edge, and not root bristlegrass for the low edge, and inland sea oats for the medium. And then CC Parker says that she thinks the Virginia wild rye looks a bit wild for the urban garden, and she wasn't sure how an HOA will like it. She likes inland sea oats.
Yeah, that's my thought about the Virginia wild rye, is that it's a little bit wild for a suburban urban garden. I mean, it can get to 3 or 4 feet. So maybe that's not a good choice, and we should look at maybe 3 and 4 and take out the wild rye. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah, and the other thing is you can use the wild rye in the backyard. Susan Martin says that wild rye seeds a bit more as in the sun, right, but it blooms lovely in her garden.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've seen Cece's garden. I help Cece with her garden. So yeah, but also, you know, that's also quite a large garden. So we think maybe 2 would be an alternate if your garden is large and you can afford to let it spread a little bit. And the Carex. Nobody has any. Now, what were the 2 species again that Steve? I'm not seeing chat. Where's my chat? I'm looking for the names that Steve typed.
Hey Beth, this is Steven. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great. I just wanted to throw those 2 out there. Those are ones that I've seen. Carex, Flacosperma, if y'all are familiar with that one. It's a low clumping sedge, and it kind of has more bluish green foliage, and it's might give a bit of a depth to the garden. And then the purple top, the Tridens flavus as well. It's a little bit more shaded, mid-high grass, gets a little bit taller, but it's not as maybe wild looking, and it does add some purple color as well. So I just thought I'd throw those 2 in there.
Well, and Jaime and I discussed the purple top, and we were trying to decide if it would take enough shade. If it would take, is it really going to flourish in the shade?
I think so. I've seen it growing on the side of the road on the way to Livingston ones, and it was pretty. It looked pretty shady there. I mean, not real shady, but part shade.
Okay.
And the purple top is really growing. I mean, it was.
Raise your hand, Bob. Hello.
Yes.
Can y'all hear me? Okay, so I have Cherokee sedge, Virginia wild rye, purple top, and I have yellow Indian grass, and I have brown seed paspalum are all, well, the Virginia wild rye is probably the most in the sun. I don't think it looks particularly wild in my garden. I think it looks really pretty. I'm trying to figure out how to post the pictures so you can see how pretty it looks when it is in bloom. But the brown seed actually does pretty good. I don't know if that's coming up on your list. The Cherokee sedge doesn't really spread a lot in my garden. It does. It's in pretty much shade. It does provide seed, but it doesn't really spread a lot. Virginia wild rye has seeded more. So I do pull that up in a few other places. But the purple top, it's okay. I wouldn't say it was flourishing, but it's actually okay. It was. I'll see if I can find some.
Who is that speaking? Who was that just speaking?
That was Susie Martin.
Oh, Susie. Okay. Okay. So the one thing about the brown seed paspalum is that it looks like, you know, for the layperson, it looks like Florida paspalum and
Dallas grass.
When it's not in bloom, it doesn't look like, you know, we're looking for garden plants, right? So we took brown seed paspalum off the list, even though I know it's quite a nice native grass. Purple top, yeah.
I got 3 comments from different people saying narrow leaf wood oats are really nice. And you said that you didn't have a source, but Julie DeBlanc says Houston Audubon grows the narrow leaf wood oats, and I really like it too.
Okay. And does that do as well in the shade? I don't have a lot of, I have seen that.
Yes.
I have seen that along trails and stuff in the shade.
Yes. We collected it in the shade in Houston Arboretum.
Yeah. Okay, guys, you're adding to my list, not taking away. We're supposed to go. That's okay. That's okay. Okay, so narrow leaf. So we need to look at that one. Okay. Yeah. How are we doing on time? Okay. So I don't know that we've got. I think what we're saying is that Virginia wild rye is something that might be in a larger garden, probably not in the front garden. Cherokee sedge is a good one, and we need to look at that other Cherokee that Stephen suggested. And then chesmanthium. This is just the chesmanthium is something that we've specified commercially. I mean, it's really pretty available, but we can look at the slender as well. So absolutely nothing for inland CO. Yeah, you think the inland CO, Bob, is pretty aggressive.
It took it a few years, but now it's trying to come up all over the yard. It's easy to control.
Yeah, no, mine got really aggressive. I've had it for about 5 or 6 years. It got really aggressive, and I don't know if the cinderwood oat is a narrow leaf a little less aggressive than the broadleaf. I've never grown the slender.
I think so.
Okay, so maybe we need to relook at that. Okay, all right. I'm going to move on to the next one. Okay, so Turk's cap. I think this is kind of a no-brainer. Good wildlife, part shade. I have a beautiful stand that's under my oak. It does sort of move around the garden a little bit. I find it kind of everywhere, but I don't really care in my garden. But I think it's, you know, I chop it back in the wintertime and then it comes back into a really lush, nice shrub. So does anybody disagree with this selection? I'd like 50 yeses now.
I agree, Beth. It just needs to maybe be placed appropriately so it doesn't, you know, go crazy and take over the other species. Yeah,
it can move, but it's just such an easy plant. Again, it's readily available in trade. People know it. Great hummingbirds and everything. So, okay, right. And then this is another one, the American beautyberry. It gets a little big. I had Mickey with the Forestry Service said that he thought it needed to be more on the edge plant and have a little more sun. I've got actually a Mexican beautyberry in my yard, but it's planted in pretty good shade. I think again, this is another one that, even though it can be quite large, it's just such a beautiful native. I have a hard time thinking of a garden without it. Any comments on this?
I got a
Julie says- Go ahead.
There's a comment on Turk's Cap. Julie suggested when you write the Turk's Cap, write the maintenance for it, because she says her HOA always wants to cut it before hummingbird migration. So maybe put in a line saying about that.
Prune in the summer before the bloom starts, so that you have a control. Yeah, and that's pretty much, you know, our thing here is that our perennials last so long that by the time the butterflies come through, they're all leggy and laying over. So if you know, Heidi Sheesy, you know, commented on this years ago, you know, cut it back hard in the middle of the summer, so by fall it's you know, not too rangy and it's in full bloom. So okay, so I think any comments on Beautyberry? Anybody disagree that this should be one of the 9, or
No, but
you choose?
I found 2 comments on chat. Candace Donahue said that she had one Beautyberry several years ago that didn't thrive until they cut the tree and it got more sunlight. And Julie said Beautyberry should be purple and not the white cultivars.
So yeah, again, we want to do natives. We're not talking cultivars. We want to do natives. Although wildflower.org says that that it could be white or pink. So I don't know if it's a native, white's a native, or if it's cultivar. So okay, I'm going to move to the next one, pigeonberry. So I planted this 3 times, and the 3rd time I planted it, I planted up underneath my oaks, and it is just doing fabulously. But I killed it several times before it got going. It's run really well. People keep telling me it's going to spread. I don't care if it spreads in my garden, but I don't know if it's going to be well behaved enough. Anybody grow this? Okay, Cece saying loves it but invasive. Cece, is that about the pigeonberry? Cece, can you?
Okay,
Cece,
one second.
Okay.
You can talk now, Cece.
I can talk? Yay.
Yeah.
Yes, the pigeonberry, and it grows in sun, shade, in your roses, in your vegetable garden, any place within 30 feet of where the plant is.
So too aggressive for a residential garden.
It is, although it's very pretty. And I'm with you, Beth. I absolutely love it. So I just, as soon it comes up in pots where I don't plant it, and it literally carpets the bottom of the pot, or the top of the pot, and so I just rip it up as I water.
Okay. Yeah. See, I've only had it for about a year, so I finally, as I said, I finally got it to grow. But I got to tell them not to vacuum.
Okay, Carol Oler says it spreads readily but easy to pull up. And Martha Richardson said she planted hers under an orange tree 5 years ago, and it gets bigger, but no problem with aggressiveness. So maybe if it's darker, it might not be less aggressive.
Okay, sorry guys, cleaners were vacuuming. I had to ask them to stop. Go ahead. 5 years, getting larger. Martha says not too aggressive. Difficult to grow things. Spreads like pigeonberry is great. Can cut it back. Okay.
Well, and I tried 3 times and I never could get it to grow. I was kind of like you on your first time. I've never been able to grow it, so I always thought it was hard to grow. I guess.
Well,
not.
I did too. I've killed a couple of flats before I got it to grow. I don't know why. But this last time I planted it, it's okay. So if we use this, then we need to tell people that it's pretty aggressive, right? And I think the same might be of this one, of a coralberry. This one spreads by spreads underground. So Lynn and I have had several discussions about this. It's pretty when it blooms, but it can also be fairly aggressive. So it concerns me a little bit.
Well, I love it because the berries you got red berries in the dead of winter when nothing else is providing color.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, it's got red berries in December, January,
Right. Okay.
or maroon
Anybody
color
else?
berries. And it's easy
Yeah.
to grow.
Okay. Susan says he gets pushed back on Semicoccinia on the original 9, mindful of a short thicket. Okay. Okay, what about Saccharum baldwinii, nearleaf plume grass? Wendy, I don't know that plant, but we can, okay. So Celeste raised her hand. Bob, can you recognize Celeste?
Getting there. Let's see. Ooh.
Actually,
I'm not seeing Celeste. Wait 1 second. Sorry. Yes. There you go, Celeste.
Yes, I'm having a lot of trouble with this because I've been wanting to say something about pigeonberry. I love pigeonberry. It's my favorite plant with shade. And then my coralberry is taken over. It is aggressive, and I know you have to cut it back, but it's a great plant too.
are you growing coralberry in just gumbo clay, or are you growing it in like garden bed?
It is in my garden, but it is gumbo clay.
Okay, because I have it in gumbo clay. I mean, it is running a little bit, but it's not really that much.
You know, give it a chance. It will come.
Okay. Anybody else experience with coralberry? Any other comments? Coralberry is easily overwatered and found out the hard way. Oh, Andrew, thanks. Slow to establish, does well and spreads readily, and it's gumbo garden. Okay, not thick, or makes a nice filler. Okay. So it seems to be everybody's, and I got another message from Mary at our office. She says no to coralberry. So I think our concern is how aggressive it is, and that it spreads. Anything that spreads from the ground worries me a bit. Okay. Any other comments? Julie says birds are having a feast. Okay. Any other comments on coralberry? So, all right. Lantana, Texas lantana. Not to be confused with the horticultural species. And also, it's hard, if we put this on the list, we have to explain to people that it isn't, we do want to use the native. So any comments on this?
Well, my comment is, this is Lan. If you have other shrubs and, you know, there's lots of shrubs and you need to take one off, I would take that off, because there are non-natives that look the same, and it's sometimes hard to tell which is which.
Well, yeah, that I see that issue. It does have a lot of great color, but you're right. I think it would be just too tempting to go in the nursery and say, "Oh, I'm going to plant lantana," so and not have the native one, and not have the native one at all.
They have to go to a place that really knows the native plant and know which is which.
Right. Okay, and we're getting concerned, not convinced that it's a shade plant. Yeah. So that would be my thought. Is I sort of, when I've ever seen this, it's been like in the edge of the woods, not really in the woods. So maybe a little too much sun. So okay, this is one we might take off, Dennis. So 3 or 4 people have said yes, they pretty much agree. Okay. Number 10, zigzag iris. Now, this is not one I have experience with, but you know, it'd be nice to have something this green and sort of give us that iris sort of look in the garden. Has anybody grown this native? I know Mark, I think Mark Morgenstern had some. I don't think Mark's on tonight.
No, he's
Hey,
not.
Beth,
Any experience on this?
this,
Iris?
hey, this is Steven. We plant this in a lot of our detention basins right on the edge of the water. And it's basically sits in wet soil, 11 and a half months out of the year. I think it's got to be pretty wet to hang out. And a lot of the times it does hang out in full sun too.
Okay. So maybe not appropriate for a shade garden in a typical neighborhood.
Yeah, unless it was like a rain garden or something.
Yeah. So this is like a back wet plant.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Anybody else have comments about the iris? Okay. Act done. All right. So this is one that we do have spider wort on the in the 9 native program. I've looked up a number of different spider worts. I have spider wort. I'm not sure. The one I bought was Tradescantia gigantea, but that's what I bought it as from Colville Nursery. But I don't really know if that's the correct species. But I was looking for something that would be small and green in the wintertime from a design standpoint. And this is under a foot, and it's native, to the area. But I don't know anybody who knows this plant or grows it. Stephen, do you know this plant at all? And then there's 2 other spider worts I looked up: the Occidentalis and the Ohioensis. This is the one we see that I've seen in the trade recently. So anybody know much about Tradescantias?
Well, when we were on Native Plant Society field trips, most of the ones we saw, and probably the ones we saw in the woods or something like that, that I remember are the Ohioensis.
Okay.
But I don't know the source of it either.
Yeah. I walked the Houston U of H technology campus, and they have sort of a wooded area there, and all through the grass there's a Tradescantia. I've never seen so much Tradescantia. It was beautiful, but it was mostly in sun. But nobody knows this plant. Stephen, you don't have the experience with this plant? Noreen? Nobody? Let's see, it comes up. Let's see, Mont Bellevue. Oh, that's Iris Briticollis. Ohioensis in the shade, but gets big and falls over. Yeah, Iris, I don't know which one I've got. It does seem to fall over. It blooms really well when I water it well, and I've got it in about half sun, half shade under the edge of the oak. So, okay, this may not be. Well, there's 2 reasons on this. Number one, nobody knows it, and I don't know where you'd ever get this one. And the other thing is that we do have Tradescantia in our regional 9 native program, so maybe this is just not a good choice. I don't see any votes for it. Yeah. Okay. Blue mist flower. Go ahead. This seems another one that's kind of a no-brainer to me because it's such a good butterfly plant. Anybody have any comments on this mist flower? This flower, Cece says Miss Flower's wonderful. So Irma says better and more sun. So there's a bunch of different mist flowers. Yeah, it can be aggressive. I'm reading notes. There's a bunch of different mist flowers. This one, according to wildflower.org, this one says part shade. This species, powdery mildew, amber, has powdery mildew on the.
But does the wildflower say it will grow in full shade? Does it mention?
It's wildflower. Most of these notes came from wildflower. The wildflower says part shade.
Okay.
Yeah. Hermie Wilcoxon said part shade is okay, full sun not so much. That's true. If I had one in full sun, you had to water it. Otherwise, it gets really scrawny in the summertime.
Well, I think the question is which kind of clinium, I still want to say eupatorium, which kind of clinium do people have? I mean, which species? Because there's different species.
This one is our native one. The other one, the one that's like sort of bushy, that's not, I don't know if it's Central Texas native, but it's definitely not native. I don't think it's native around here. The one that's like a big shrub.
There's one. I'll grab my Austin book here.
But this, Chris and Asta said she has a lot growing in part shade. The this one, I can't pronounce it. The other thing about this one is if you don't, it is very aggressive, but you just have to pluck it out in the like once or twice in the spring, and then it'll be okay. But it has suckers in the spring, and I just, like mark where it's supposed to be, and then anything else you'd be ruthless about plucking it out. That's my way to keep it.
So it seems as if a lot of these plants we're talking about are borderline aggressive. I'm looking at something. Okay, so this one's kind of a 50-50 deal. Susie Martin says that blue mistflower is another plant that caused confusion. Why is that, Susie?
What was that?
Susie, you made a comment that blue mistflowers are another plant that can cause confusion. Why do you say it causes confusion? Oh, Susie can't unmute. No, Bob, you have to unmute her. Can you unmute Susie and Stephen?
Well, they've been unmuted. I did not remute them.
Oh, you need to, Susie and Stephen, you need to press the mute button on your
I will
computer.
unmute them again.
Okay, there we go. Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of confusion. As a matter of fact, at the I think it's called the Willow Fork Park over here off of Grand Parkway, it's actually mislabeled there. They thought that they had bought the native blue mist flower, but they actually had purchased the Chromalena odorata. Are you guys familiar with that one? It's sold as blue mist flower, and it's sold as a native in a lot of the nurseries. But it is, it's also called, what else is it called? It's called fragrant blue mist flower.
It's a shrub, right?
And it's more of a shrub, right?
Yeah.
But so they even have it mislabeled there. They're going to fix it, I guess. That's another one. Lantana. People are thinking they're buying something that's native, and it's not. I don't know. I've never actually seen blue mist flower in shade, Calistenium or whatever. I've never actually seen that in deep shade. I didn't hear. Did somebody else see that in shade?
I have it in part shade, and it does really well, almost too well. So I actually have it in buried pots, so it doesn't spread out like crazy. But if you put the maintenance aspect of it, maybe a caveat, if you want to include it as an alternate, just so people are aware of its abilities.
Yeah.
Putting a lot of caveats on a lot of these things.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay. As we're going through the perennials of saying, okay, which ones will work in shade? And we've got a lot of things that are okay in part shade. So be sure that we know when we've got one that will do well in shade.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. There's a lot of things that grow with a little bit of shade, but yeah. And Robin, you said it grows wild and it smells. It smells bad. The way you said that. Robin Kasaki, you said it smells. Do you think it smells bad? I've never noticed smell.
Robin, you're unmuted.
Oh, yes, it kind of smells like cat food.
Smells like what again?
It smells like cat pee to me.
Oh, fun. Okay. Oh, that's not a deal. Okay, Cindy says she has it in Padre Island. It's done well in part shade without being aggressive. Longer bloom than colostrum. So what did you got?
What is Padre Island mist flower?
Padre Island mist flower. I don't know what that is. I don't know what Padre Island mist flower is. Okay, I'll make a note. So, but what we're looking for, of course, is we ideally want plants that are native to our area. And what I've used as reference is wildflower.org and also the USDA and BONAP. If y'all aren't familiar with BONAP, it's a pretty good website. So, okay.
What's the name of the website again, Beth?
BONAP, BONAP. And you can look on that and you can look up conoclinium. And it'll tell you all the genus, all the species, and it'll tell you where in the country those species grow. And USDA will also do that. You can put in a plant name and put in USDA after it, and then click on that and pull it up on the internet, and it will take you to the USDA site, and it'll show you where in the country it grows. And then if you scroll in, it'll even give you the county. So I'll show you that. I'll go back to this is USDA right here on this Tradescantia. And so you can see this is a subacaulus and where it's recorded now. What I've heard, and Lynn, you may have told me this, is that the BONAP data might be more updated than the USDA. But this is this Tradescantia, and then you can see the other two are more prevalent across the U.S. So
I think they just have different things. I'm not sure which is more updated or not updated, but sometimes they have differences. But
yeah, BONAP had Ohioensis not in Texas, but more East Texas and North. But USDA shows Ohioensis all through here. So anyway, so that's if you haven't explored USDA and the BONAP websites, they're pretty much fun to explore. And then there's a couple of books too that have the same thing, but just by them. So okay, so Sylvia Larada.
Talking about references. I mean, I Dr. Larry's checklist of plants of Harris and the surrounding counties, and that is like a Bible. I mean, because it documents a plant that he and anybody that brought him a plant and a bunch of people found for a 30-year period, and it's real easy to do. So now y'all can check out it or your website, but it's so valuable.
Okay, so who is speaking and you're breaking up? Who is speaking right now?
Katie.
Katie, if you could put some of that in the chat because your audio was cutting out a lot.
Perfect. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, do that chat, Katie. I'm waiting for the name of that. What reference you're using?
Oh, you're waiting for me?
I'm waiting for Katie to give us what reference she was talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is Katie, and it's Dr. Larry Brown's checklist.
Oh, Larry Brown. Okay.
Okay. And we can hear you well now.
Okay, I think I had my microphone on my leg.
Okay, what website was that?
Well, I think it's on the HNPAT website.
Oh, it's on HNPAT? Okay.
Okay. We'll check on it and be sure that it gets there, and also on the Native Plant Society website.
Okay, great. So, okay, so Lyerly Sage. I've had this one a couple of different times, a couple of different places. It moved all around and then it kind of disappeared. So my question on this one is it persistent enough?
I would say no, it's not persistent enough year-round to be included.
oh, I would say definitely. It's in fact, it's really, really aggressive. Reseeds like crazy.
Right. And see, I had it reseed for several years.
The basil rosette stays all year round, at least in my yard.
Okay, so I got no for Stephen and yes for Lan. Anybody else? Carol says it's always around. Noreen says it reseeds everywhere.
I mean, it seems like a good starter plant. I mean, sometimes, you know, you outgrow something or you want something else, but it seems pretty reliable. And it's kind of like a ground cover with the rosette, like Lan said.
Yeah.
Okay, and in enough shade to be persistent, you think?
Oh yeah, it'll bloom in shade.
Okay.
Part shade. I don't know if it's really deep shade, but I think it'll survive in deep shade, but it'll bloom in part shade.
Okay.
And
So
also
at
the
the end of
hummingbirds, even though it's blue, it's tubular, and the hummingbirds go to it, as far as Pauline Singleton told me once.
Right. Okay. Okay. So this is a definite maybe then. Okay. Heartleaf skullcap, another blue one. We're blue here. Heartleaf skullcap. I've gotten, this says dry limestone, but then I know, Katie, I know that you said you love this one. Any other comments on this?
It runs. I mean, you have to watch it, and it may run away from where you put it. So if it's running to where you don't want it, you can dig it up and put it back where it was. But I mean, it does run, but it's pretty nice. I like it. I've had it for like 10 years.
Oh, okay, that's good. Anybody else?
Same here.
Yeah. So we're talking about, this little, I think that was all about the lyre-leaf sage. I should probably say now comments about the skullcap.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good, anybody have any objection to skullcap? Okay, let's go on. Okay, coreopsis. So the question on this is, it says sun, part shade, and shade. It seems like it'd be nice to have some yellow in the garden. It does seem a little bit like, I don't know that I always see this, see a lot of this in the shade, but it'd sure be nice if we, again, have some contrasting color. So comments on coreopsis. Katie, you had a comment on coreopsis when you spoke earlier. Do you want to bring that comment up?
Well, it was just kind of like, I mean, and when you say a yellow flower, I think that would be nice, and you know, maybe that is a compromise. But it seems a little bit like it, since we don't normally see it in a woodsy, a darker edge, or maybe edge. I don't know. You know, so I'm kind of mixed. It seems like it'd be nice to introduce people to some different plants that, you know, give them something else to think about, because you can always have plants that, you know, will grow in part shade.
Uh-huh.
That was my only thought. It seems kind of like a prairie type plant almost, really.
That's the same thing. And also, I've gotten several comments that it doesn't do well in full shade, and it does maybe in part shade and more in sun. So several comments about that.
Okay, so maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, we're going to have to come up with some other colors besides blue. Okay, phlox. Okay, the phlox that I have in my garden is John Fanick phlox, so I don't know that it's really a native, and it kind of wanders. So does anybody have experience? This Drummondii, somebody put on the list, and so I left it on here because it does say part shade, but it is an annual. The Davaricata is a part shade, but I don't have a lot of experience with this. It says it's evergreen.
Phlox
Anybody?
pilosa.
Pilosa?
Yeah. That's a perennial, and it grows in the shade. It doesn't, I think it probably blooms a little bit better if it gets a little more sun, but it does bloom in the shade, part shade.
Do we have the phlox in the, we don't have phlox in the 9 We don't have phlox in here. No, okay, I just double checking. Anybody else have know much? Does anybody know anything about this wild blue phlox? Too wet?
The which one?
This Davaricata. So, you think the pilosa? Man, anybody else? Steve, Katie, any comments on phlox?
I don't have any experience.
Yeah, neither do I.
How about Noreen, Julie, anybody? Experience with phlox?
Well, Julie says only experience in edge shade situation. I guess that's this phlox. Jane Lindsay does well in part shade. Does it bloom? I mean, does it bloom in shade? Question mark. And Susie
Yeah.
likes it. Hers is in afternoon shade, but still,
Okay.
must get a bit of sun. This is, I think these are Drummond phlox that they're commenting on.
Yeah, I'm not, the chats aren't coming through quickly on mine. So, okay, so we need to do a little more research on phlox and which one, I guess, and would it really take the shade? It seems like a nice soft little sort of ground color. Any other comments?
Julie only has experience with phlox in full sun.
Okay, okay.
And Susie also has phlox in more sun.
Okay. Okay, so maybe not then.
But the
Okay,
Pilosa does grow in shade.
The Pilosa?
Yeah.
Okay, well let's look at that one then. Let's look at that one. I think a phlox would be nice, you know, it'd be nice to give us sort of this pink color. So I'll look for that. Okay, Gaillardia. Now we have this on the other 9 natives list. But it does seem to grow some in part shade. Jaime's, you know, commented that he'd seen it in part shade a good bit. I kind of hate to repeat one of the 9 natives, but again, I'm looking for some color. So we need some species that are going to have some color in the garden.